Big fella, how you doing this week?
Doing great. How are you, Jordan?
Doing good, man. I'm looking for college football stories, Cole, and everywhere I look, it's Florida banning the Gator Chomp. Mississippi is being called out by Greg Sankey in the SEC. I'm so ready for football. What do you make of the state of the game right now when you just kind of look around and people are getting back on campus and we're looking towards football season? How confident do you feel like it's going to happen?
Are we just talking about any football at all, or a full season the way we expect it, or?
I guess just how do you see the season playing? Like for right now, if I asked you, what do you think the fall is going to look like? What would your reply be?
I think there will be some sort of interruptions, but I think we'll get very close to a full season. I just believe that if the season is shortened, then I think the championship edition of it will be moved up. I just don't see a scenario where we play into November and then we have to pause and we try to come back, February, March and play the playoff and conference championship games, something like that. I don't really think that's feasible. So I think I could see a sscenario where maybe the powers that be say, hey, we're going to go ahead and play our conference championship games, and then the next week or 2 weeks later, we got to roll into the college football playoff. Like, we'll get some bowls in if we can, but we got to go ahead and play those games.
Right.
There's not going to be this 1 month layoff. Like, we got to play them now. It's just the only way, and logistically, you figure out a way to make it happen. But I could see some bumps in the road with maybe certain teams from certain parts of the country not being able to participate in some non-conference games. Travel being a potential issue. So I think there'll be some hiccups. I think there'll be some hurdles, but it may be some interruptions. But I do think we're going to get close to a full season. I'm kind of like you. We talked about this on my show in Birmingham yesterday. For the first time in a couple of weeks, I feel like we got sort of more bad news than good news this week. There's an SEC school that I know about that's getting hit pretty hard by COVID-19 right now. There's some other schools that have seen a little bit of an uptick. Obviously, Texas announced theirs yesterday. They got a pretty decent amount of guys who have tested positive and or are quarantined. And you look at geographically in our footprint, there's a lot of new hotspots that are popping up. And then you hear Fauci talking about, maybe we shouldn't play football. I saw some guy reporting yesterday that he talked to a college football executive that said he didn't see any way we play this year. So I just felt like this week has been more bad news than maybe the last 3 or 4 weeks combined when we're talking about what the season may look like. So I understand why some folks might be down on it a little bit, but I still think we get close to a full season. Now, how it's going to look, fans, things like that, TV coverage, I don't really know, but I do think we're going to get it.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I mean, last week I felt like they were going to put fans in the stands for a full season. I mean, when we were talking about it, felt like the momentum was heading towards that direction. And then this week, it felt like all that momentum just slammed into a wall by reports and everything going on. Cole Cubelic joining us here. You have great relationships with all the schools in the conference. What has it been like having at least the players back in the building?
I think it's generated a lot of momentum. I think there's a lot of excitement about it. I think it's mostly been positive, but I think it's been very careful.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you're now going to begin to experience some of the difficulties of how to handle situations where you get a player who tests positive and he's been around other guys. And I think that's where the real setback comes. Like, I don't want to see any player contract this virus, but it's probably going to happen. We've already seen it happen. But then you not only is he set back for 2 weeks, but everybody who's been around him is then quarantined and set back for 2 weeks. So that hurts your football team, and that hurts your progress. You look at some of these guys. If you want to talk about timing, you're tested positive now, not near as bad because you still look at that calendar and you have plenty of time to go get ready for a season. But it's I think that there is a little bit of a disconnect at some places between the medical staff and the coaching staff of, hey, we need to do some activities, we need to do certain things, we're going to try to do this, and the medical staff wants to do it a little bit of a different way. So that's probably going to be an ongoing ping pong battle until we get through the entire season, to be honest.
I don't want to walk into a maze here because I know that this answer can be a little tricky because, there's politics in it. I don't care about your politics. Just from a football standpoint, what did you make of the Mike Gundy situation at Oklahoma State?
I think it just shows you that having relationships with your players is more important than ever.
Mm-hmm.
There's players do have more power than they've ever had, but there are some national writers that continue to beat the drum of college football players have reached a new level of power. They're going to shut the season down, and this is the time to swing your sword and make the big changes. It's just that's not real. That's just pump the brakes a little bit. College football players are not going to sit out a season. There's too many kids that want to do it. There's too many kids that know how valuable it is, and it's going to take them to where they want to go, so they're going to go do it. Yeah. I said it a couple of weeks ago. We were talking about it. Most college football players, the main thing they want to do, play college football. Yeah. They're going to do whatever they have to do to be able to put that uniform on and go play. But I do think the days of the head coaching dictatorship are over, and that's good. That's a good thing for college football. My way or the highway. You don't have a say. What you think doesn't matter. Shut up and go to work. Do this, do that, and I don't really care about your feelings and what it means to you, because the reality is when you talk about that power, players now have options. Options give you leverage. Leverage yields power. And that's where a lot of it comes from. 20 years ago, when I was playing college football, the word transfer was a death sentence. You didn't transfer and end up somewhere else and have a great career at another Power 5 school, and all of a sudden, things were great and you were going to get drafted. That was a unicorn of college football if you saw that happen somewhere. Now we've got multiple guys transferring in division.
Yeah. We
had a wide receiver from Alabama last week announce he's going to go play at Mississippi State. Georgia has an offensive guard that's going to go play at Tennessee. We've got guys transferring within their own divisions. Remember, 2 years ago, people were losing their minds over guys transferring within the conference. And now we got guys going in division, and we don't even really talk about it anymore. So those options now yield a little bit more power for the players, because if something happens that they don't like, or if they don't get along with a guy, or they don't feel like they're being treated fairly, they can just leave. And, most guys are getting waivers. And if you've graduated, it doesn't matter. You can go play somewhere anyway. So I do think that some of that's good for college football. It makes roster management almost impossible for some of these coaches. But I believe that the relationships that the coaches have and the figure that the coach needs to be to the player has to be very different and has to change. It's a big advantage for a guy like Ed Orgeron, because, he's not super nerd X's and O's, my way or the highway, you better learn my system kind of a guy. Ed Orgeron's a relationship guy. I think if you take any of the guys who are dominant in recruiting, who are really good recruiters, those are the guys that probably have the most advantages moving forward. Like Jeremy Pruitt's a relationship guy. Dabo Swinney is a relationship guy. People don't want to say this about Nick Saban, but he is. Mm-hmm. He knows how to build relationships with players and gain their trust. He's a relationship guy. The other guys that, just kind of give you that cold shoulder, don't feel like they care about the players. They just want to coach. They just believe in their system, or they're trying to get to the NFL. Those are the ones that are going to have a hard time sticking around college football, because those relationships now become 1,000 times more important. Players have a voice through social media. Players have the option to be able to leave, and the media is just waiting for some of these guys to drop nuggets of information of them being unhappy or a coach not doing things the way that they want them to, and we've seen how it's going to blow up. So Mike Gundy cannot be tone deaf anymore. This is not about freedom of speech. This is not about his opinion. It's about what his opinion might mean to his players. And if that bothers the best player on his team, and then that forces not only the best player, but 10 or 15 other players to say they're not going to be a part of that team, guess what Mike Gundy doesn't have? A football team. And if he's pissing off his players on his team now, there's a good chance that recruits are not going to go want to play for him because of the way they're going to see it portrayed in the news. And if he can't recruit good college football players, guess what he's not going to do? Win games. If he doesn't win games, he's not going to be a coach. So that's the cycle that coaches need to be aware of and need to wake up to. It's not just about political feelings or freedom of speech or what you think versus what another guy thinks, or what if he had a different shirt on. That doesn't matter in this case. What matters is that the emotion, the feelings of players, what players think of you, is now bigger than ever before. And if you're tone deaf to that, it's going to bite you in the rear end.
Cole Cubelic, SEC Network, ESPN XFL. Remember, he's with us every Friday, brought to you by Tex Morris and Edward Jones. You brought up Mississippi State. Tyrell Shavers, the big wide receiver, 6'6" target, transferred out of Tuscaloosa into Starkville. At one point early in Leach's tenure. It seemed like he was on the brink of maybe losing the locker room. What are you hearing about the state of Mississippi State's program under his direction at this point?
Yeah, I think now that guys are back in the facility, things are looking a little bit better. I mean, listen, they had a couple guys leave. I mean, they had two guys transfer out to the same school, so they've had a couple guys bail. Two of their defenders are now going to be playing at Florida State. So they did have a couple of guys leave. Keaton Thompson's not going to be there anymore. But that's going to be a tough one because you think about just how different everything's going to be this season anyway, Jordy. Now you got a guy that has the most different personality of any coach in college football. You're bringing in a new quarterback who comes from Stanford and hasn't really been able to spend a ton of time around his teammates because he wasn't there for the spring. And so I think that this is probably still a big learning curve, an ongoing learning experience for the individuals, the coaches, the staff, for everybody. So I don't know if we can really make anything of what it's been or what it's going to be, because I think they're all trying to learn a lot about each other right now, what they want to be, what they can be. And then you got the system that's 100% different from what they've been doing. And that's going to be a gigantic learning curve as well. So there's a lot to be done there. I'm interested to see how it looks, especially early in the season, because I think they have some guys. They have a good group of receivers. I think KJ Costello, when you just look at his numbers, I mean, I think he's got 8 300-yard games against Power 5 opponents in his career. If he's healthy, the guy can play. They'll have a couple kids up front on that offensive line. I think Kylan Hill's the most dynamic running back in the league. Yep. So you've got some weapons, and we can say, well, they lost everything on defense, but when was the last time Mike Leach won a game playing defense anyway? So they're going to be interesting to watch. I think they may have the biggest gap between ceiling and floor than any team in the league. I think you're looking at a legit 6-game differential of what they could probably cap out at with like 9 wins, and maybe even be a 3-4 win football team, just depending on how things go and what that thing looks like.
You're the best, big fella. Have a good weekend, man. Thank you.
Thanks, Jordy.
Cole Cubelic every week.